of COVID-19. While the stay-at-home order recorded total compliance, there were minor business activities by filling stations, food vendors, and other essential workers. Shemilori Amore has the details.
In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the federal government put in place a lockdown strategy in 3 locations, while in Ogun State, this effort was complemented with additional precautionary measures. One of such is the intermittent relaxation days granted residents, which provides opportunity for restock for their homes with essential food items. As the second phase of the 14 days lockdown declared by President Muhammadu Buhari winds down, it has become imperative for residents of Ogun State to cooperate with the government in managing the coronavirus pandemic while monitoring the level of compliance with the lockdown order. Major streets, parks and markets again went to bed, and security personnel drafted to ensure strict obedience by people were seen manning strategic areas. Acting Chairman of Police Community Relations Committee, Ogun State, Venerable Dr. Samson Pokwala, says the compliance in Ogun State is effective and efficient due to the level of enlightenment and ability to key into adversaries given on COVID-19 pandemic.
It has to do with the level of enlightenment. It has to do with the penetration of the security agencies, especially the Police Community Relations Committee members in all nooks. We have been able to carry our members along. We have been able to, sensitize our members as to the need for us to, just to get this right. And for once, you know that in Ogun State, we value life. And whenever we have anything that wants to threaten our life, we have a way of rising up to the occasion.
On the issue of burglary, Venerable Dr. Samson Kunle Pokwala maintains that security agencies have called on CDAs to rise up to the occasion on vigilance in their localities.
And I will give kudos to the government and the security agencies and those that have been working them with the security agencies on this COVID-19 pandemic. We've called on all CDAs to rise up to the occasion in terms of vigilance, local vigilance. We don't have enough police, we don't have enough security. Are trying, the So Safe Corps and all other security agencies, they are trying, but be that as it may, it also lies on the members of the community to come together at this critical time.
The lockdown is a precautionary measure to prevent the spread of coronavirus in the state. Shemilori Amore, Ogtv News.
Nigeria has recorded 196 new cases of the novel coronavirus, bringing the total to 1,728, according to a tweet by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control in the early hours of Thursday. Of the new infections, 87 are in Lagos, 24 are in Kano, while 18 are in Gombe. 17 were recorded in Kaduna, 16 in the FCT, 10 in Katsina, 8 in Sokoto, 7 in Edo, 6 in Borno, and 1 each in Yobe, Ebonyi, and Adamawa states. With this development, the NCDC notes that the coronavirus has now spread to 34 of the 36 states of the country, including FCT. 307 persons have been discharged, while 51 deaths have so far been recorded. The federal government has said no fewer than 113 health workers are currently infected with the novel coronavirus, stressing the need for those in the front lines against COVID-19 to adhere to its advisories relating to the management of the pandemic. This was as the government asked Nigerians to remain where they are at present and refrain from traveling to their states or villages, saying the measure was necessary to halt the transmission of the novel coronavirus pandemic. Government, which said it had received an interim report from the team of medical experts it sent to Kano in the wake of the mass death in the state, added that it has sent in 3 ventilators, personal protective equipment, and experts drawn from Abuja, Lagos, and Irua to assist the state in halting the death of people. While it said 2 molecular laboratories have begun functioning in Kano State, the federal government added that it has also begun establishing a 3rd laboratory there. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 disclosed these on Thursday in Abuja while giving an update on the fight against the pandemic during its daily briefing. The federal government has ordered civil servants in the country to resume duties effective from Monday, May 4. This was contained in a memo signed on Thursday by the head of service of the Federation, Dr. Folashade Yemi Eson. In the memo directed to all heads of ministries, departments and agencies, the head of service said the workers will be allowed to work 3 times in a week and closing time will be 2 in the afternoon. She stressed the observance of social distancing, use of face masks, hand sanitizers and good general hygiene at all government offices, while noting that all federal secretariats have been decontaminated and efforts were ongoing to do same in other public offices. It will be recalled that the federal government ordered all public servants on grade level 12 and below to stay at home on March 24. Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has said the delayed closure of the country's borders, seaports and airports, including the failure of returnees to self-isolate, caused the spread of COVID-19. According to the governor, Lagos was prepared to curb the spread of COVID-19, but had to wait for the federal government to shut airports, seaports and land borders. You would recall that Nigeria recorded its first COVID-19 death on February 27. President Muhammadu Buhari officially shut the country's airports, seaports and borders on March 24. The governor of Ekiti State, Kayode Fayemi, has appointed man in trading video who rejected his son for sneaking into Ekiti State from Lagos State as a COVID-19 response ambassador in Ekiti State. The man, identified as Mr. Adeoye, who is a former road safety officer, rejected his son due to the fear that Lagos remains the epicenter of coronavirus in the country and did not want to take chances by allowing his son into his house, who, according to him, might have been infected. The government made the appointment known in a tweet on Thursday afternoon, stating that Mr. Adeoye represents the kind of self-discipline, selflessness and sense of collective responsibility that Ekiti State and Nigeria need desperately today to progress. The government further stated that Ekiti State will in future recognize Mr. Adeoye's valor as an example of the rebirth of Ekiti values orientation, which is the central focus of Governor Kayode Fayemi's administration. Meanwhile, Ekiti State government has ordered the indefinite suspension of one Shola Durodola, a member of the COVID-19 task force, over incompetence and high-handedness. It was gathered that Durodola was the one who shot the video where he was making a mockery of the father who had come to report his son for violating the stay-at-home order. Jigawa State has recorded its first coronavirus-related death in Duse local government area of the state. The state's Commissioner for Health and Chairman Task Force on COVID-19, Dr. Abba Zakari, announced this while speaking to newsmen on Thursday in Duse. Zakari said the deceased was one of the 5 patients with confirmed cases of the virus in the state. 8 of the 11 samples we have at Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital came out, and unfortunately, 5 of them returned positive, he said. An Ilorin Magistrate Court on Thursday sentenced 4 persons to 14 days self-isolation for attempting to escape with one Oladayo COVID-19 patient at Zobi Isolation Center in Ilorin. The Chief Magistrate, Mr. Bill Soliu, also ordered the convicts to pay 20,000 naira each in addition to the isolation sentence. Soliu also ordered the NCDC officers who arrested the violators to liaise with the officers of the Correctional Center and the state's COVID-19 Technical Committee to ensure that the convicts were isolated. The convicts are Sadiq, Isiaka, Hakim, and Wasiu. The prosecutor, Inspector Nasir Yusuf, urged the court to try the offenders summarily since they had pleaded guilty. Zamfara State government has declared wanted one Jamilu Shinkafi who tested positive for coronavirus but could not be found afterwards. The State Health Commissioner Yahaya Kanoma told the media that Shinkafi absconded after he was confirmed positive for the virus, noting that efforts were being intensified to track him wherever he is hiding. He said the state government even informed the Federal Ministry of Health about this sad development, adding that they are going to track him and arrest him. Kanoma said the state government has ordered the disinfection of Jamilu's house as well as the entire area. He pleaded to the people of the area who had recent contact with Jamilu to report to the isolation center for testing. The current administration in Ogun State is putting all necessary measures in place to safeguard the economy and welfare of the people to mitigate the negative effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the state. Commissioner for Finance in the state and economic advisor to the governor, Dakpo Ogubadejo, made this known while distributing palliative items to members of Paralympics of Team Ogun, physically challenged at Dipo Dina International Stadium, and executive members of Oke Irojo Residents Association at GRA Ijebu-Ode. Matthew Shoumi has the details.
Having touched hundreds of thousands of homes and positively affected many lives by way of distribution of palliative to the vulnerable to cope with the stay-at-home order to curtail the spread of COVID-19, Prince Dakpo Abiodun-led administration in Ogun State is determined to ensure more homes and families benefit from the palliatives in the second phase of the distribution. Distributing the palliatives loaded with 7 different items, Commissioner for Finance and Economic Advisor to the Governor, Dakpo Ogubadejo, explains what the government is doing to weather the storm of the pandemic as he uses the occasion to educate the para-athletes on what they need to do to protect themselves against the pandemic.
Some of the things we did were first to dimension the impact of this pandemic on first the economy of the state, on the welfare of our people, and also the state of preparedness of our healthcare sector and facilities. These palliatives were meant for the poor, the aged, and the vulnerable. You know, people that truly need help, you know, and that's one of the reasons we are reaching out to you. And we're ensuring that the distribution of these palliatives is well organized, okay? And that's one of the reasons we've decided that our people must get involved.
The beneficiaries were full of appreciation to the government for bringing succor to them.
I will say thank you to the governor and to the well-meaning people of Ogun State that have made this possible. I will say thank you and more grace to their help.
The commissioner then went on to also present the palliative items to executive members of Oke Irojo Residents Association, GRA Ijebu-Ode.
You know, the first phase is for the poor, the aged, and the vulnerables. And we wanted to make sure that these packages actually reach the people for whom they are meant for. And so that's one of the reasons that a committee was established.
Secretary of the association, Professor Olusegun Akinwande, appreciates the gesture as he promises that the association will ensure the items get to the vulnerable within the GRA.
Today is a very good day, and we want to promise that with the help of Baba, these palliative packages will get to all the necessary people.
Meanwhile, the residents of Ijebu-Ode are also following the stay-at-home order as markets, motor parks, city centers, and other areas are devoid of usual activities except those exempted from the lockdown. There was also the presence of security personnel in strategic locations to ensure strict compliance with the lockdown and forestall any breakdown of law and order. By tomorrow, Friday, 1st of May, it will be 1 month since Ogun State came under lockdown. Here in Ijebu-Ode, the people are still observing the stay-at-home order as roads are deserted, offices remain closed, and businesses under lock and key. It was the same story in Shagamu, where only those discharging essential services and exempted from the lockdown were seen on the road. Matthew Shoumi, Ogtv News.
The Otumba Adejare Adegbero Foundation has joined the list of non-governmental organizations that are giving stimulus packages to members of the society to cushion the effects of coronavirus outbreak in Ogun State. This foundation's gesture is, however, to media practitioners who are one of the frontline workers in the fight against the virus. Led by its Director General, Alhaji Mutiu Amoje, the foundation took food items to members of the pen profession at the Iweroyin House in Okeilewo, Sweet FM, Fresh FM, Family FM, and Ogun State Television, all in Abeokuta. Alhaji Amoje explains the spirit behind the gesture.
And then to supporting the government based on the issue of palliative, the living package issue. And then the government cannot do it alone. We are the foundation from our chairman, Otumba Adejare Adegbero Foundation. We have to supporting the government and the people, and the people in the area of the station.
The foundation also reached out to other places like the Alake and Olowus palaces in Abeokuta, as well as some places in Ifo and Iwekoro local government areas of the state. And still to come in the news, President Buhari warns military against complacency in fight against insurgency. These and more stories after the break. Glad to have you back. The news continues. The European Union has commenced the distribution of food items to vulnerable households in Nigeria. EU's head of delegation to Nigeria and ECOWAS ambassador Ketil Carlson flagged off the distribution on Thursday in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Carlson explained that the intervention targeted at 1,200 vulnerable households was to support the Nigerian government in its bid to cushion the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on the people. Speaking at Karima Jiji community in Abuja, the EU ambassador stated that 25% of the items will be targeted at people living with disabilities. According to him, the remaining 70% is for widows and other vulnerable persons. The EU also donated a hand washing system to the people of Karima Jiji as part of measures to curb the spread of COVID-19 in the community. As Nigeria joins the world in celebrating the World Immunization Day, a campaign to urge greater engagement around immunization globally and the importance of vaccination in improving health and well-being of everyone has again been emphasized. The theme for this year's celebration is Vaccines Work for All, and the campaign focus on vaccines and the people who develop, deliver, and receive them are heroes by working to protect the health of everyone everywhere.
World Immunization Week, celebrated in the last week of April, aims to promote one of the world's most powerful tools for health, which is the use of vaccines to protect people of all ages against disease. The theme of this year's celebration is Vaccines Work for All, and the campaign will focus on how vaccines, people who develop, deliver, and receive them are heroes by working to protect the health of everyone, everywhere.
Immunization is a building block of strong primary health care and universal health coverage. Increasing vaccine coverage in low and middle income countries by 2030 would not only save lives, it could also prevent 24 million people from falling into poverty due to health expenses.
Immunization is widely recognized as one of the most successful and cost-effective health interventions ever introduced. It prevents over 2 to 3 million deaths every year and now protects children not only against diseases for which vaccines have been available for many years, such as diphtheria, tetanus, polio and measles, but also against diseases such as pneumonia and rotavirus diarrhea, two of the biggest killers of children under the age of 5.
But there are still millions of children worldwide who don't receive these life-saving tools. Many have never been immunized. We must not tolerate a world in which a child dies from a disease that can be easily prevented with a low-cost vaccine.
This year's campaign, however, aims to demonstrate the value of vaccines for the health of children, communities, and the world. Show how routine immunization is the foundation for strong, resilient health systems and universal health coverage. And lastly, to highlight the need to build on immunization progress while addressing gaps, including through increased investment in vaccines and immunization. Given that, the World Health Organization, WHO, has designated 2020 the International Year of the Nurses and the Midwife. WHO will highlight nurses and midwives for their crucial roles as early vaccine champions for new parents and parents-to-be.
There is need for continuous awareness and increased rates of immunization against vaccine-preventable diseases for children, health, communities, and society at large. The State Commissioner for Health, Dr. Tomi Koka, stated this during the celebration of African Vaccination Week at Primary Health Care Center, Obantoko, Abeokuta. Yusuf Ganion reports.
In the last week of April every year, the World Health Organization celebrates African Vaccination Week with the World Immunization Week, basically to promote the use of vaccines to protect people of all ages against the disease. Immunization saves millions of lives every year and is widely recognized as one of the world's most successful and cost-effective health interventions. For this reason, Ogun State government, through the Ministry of Health and some other partners, joined the rest of the world to celebrate the day to demonstrate value for vaccines in the society.
So the African Vaccination Week is celebrated every year since 2011. And it's to commemorate and remind people the importance of having vaccination, that ensuring that their children have vaccination to prevent disease, and particularly during this time of COVID, where people are distracted, we want to reinforce the importance of ensuring that our children are brought for their vaccination so that they do not end up with preventable diseases that we can vaccinate against.
The State Commissioner for Health, Dr. Tomi Koka, says this year's theme, Vaccines Works for All, is to ensure that vaccines throughout the lifespan protect everyone and society at large.
Vaccine Works for All includes the people who develop vaccines, who manufacture it, the people who administer it, and the people who are the beneficiary. That as long as we continue to vaccine, it protects the entire society, and the benefits is for all. And it's important also for our pregnant women and women of reproductive age group to present themselves for tetanus toxoid and to present our children for the routine polio and vaccines that we give to them.
Stakeholders and partners also stress that strong primary healthcare system is the most effective way to strengthen immunization coverage across the world.
And with these efforts, we believe that we are going to reduce further the population of unimmunized children within the society in Ogun State.
The ongoing routine services going on in the primary health care centers across the state. During the COVID lockdown, the primary health care workers across the 20 LGs are still maintaining routine services, such as immunization and family planning.
But in spite of efforts like this to protect communities from vaccine-preventable disease outbreaks, it is pertinent for countries to maintain a routine immunization service with innovative approaches in health facilities.
According to the World Health Organization, there are still nearly 20 million children who are yet to get the vaccine they need. But Ogun State government said it's going to demonstrate valuable vaccine for the health of the children, communities, and society at large. Yusuf Ganiyu reporting for Ogtv News.
Planting of good variety, disease-resistant and matured stems have been ascribed to quality cassava production for desired profitable yield to the farmers in addition to land, capital and other agricultural inputs. To this end, Ogun State government is ensuring that the cassava stems to be planted by the farmers under the Anchor Borrowers Program are matured, disease-free and fit for planting in order to measure up to the expectation of takers. The State Commissioner for Agriculture, Dr. Adiola Odedino, made this known while leading stakeholders under the Anchor Borrowers Program on an assessment tour to one of the International Institute for Tropical Agriculture, IITA, Outgrowers Farm at Ibeshi, Yewa North local government area of the state. The 50-hectare farmland where TME 4-19 variety of cassava stem was planted is owned by an Ogun State investor and being monitored by IITA towards the supply of good planting materials for Ogun State farmers. Dr. Odedino emphasized government's commitment to ensure massive food production by small-scale farmers, women and youth, which he said cannot materialize without planting improved varieties.
We are here for inspection, and we want you to demonstrate for us what the bundle is, and our quality specification is that 50 sticks of 1 meter long is one bundle. Yeah. Properly what? Tied and labeled individually. We don't want underage them. We don't also want overage them.
Chairman, Anchor Borrower Steering Committee in Ogun State, Professor Bola Okuneye, also implored them to supply the cuttings to meet up with cassava planting season, as agricultural practice is seasonal. In a reaction, the Senior Special Assistant to the Governor on Agriculture, Dr. Mrs. Angel Adela Jakuye, enjoined the supplier to liaise and make contact with relevant government officials whenever they face challenges regarding transportation of the materials across the state. IITA representative and supervisor of the farm, Mr. Kunle Akinyemi, expressed readiness to supply sufficient cassava cuttings to the farmers, saying the varieties have been tested and proven to yield at least 45 tons per hectare, which he said would generate more income to farmers. The team also inspected a food processing factory also at Ibeshi to ensure they adhere to their production and linkage activities, as well as health and safety precautions. Commissioner for Agriculture, Dr. Adiola Odedino, enjoined workers at the factory to obey the state's laid down rules and regulations, as well as observe preventive measures to obey the state's laid down rules and regulations, as well as observe preventive measures against the spread of COVID-19 on the state. Others on the inspection team include the Program Manager of Ogun State Agricultural Development Program, Ogtv, Mrs. Taiwo Anyosonwo, the Program Manager of Cassava Revolution, Mrs. Kainde Jokutoye, the State Director of Nigeria Agricultural Insurance Corporation, Mr. Taiwo Adiroju, and representative of Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Adekunle Badejo. President Muhammadu Buhari has warned the military against complacency in the task of ensuring that the nation's territory is no longer habitable for terrorists. He gave the warning on Thursday when he received Yobe State Governor Mai Mala Buni at the presidential villa in Abuja. The president explained that this was necessary to achieve sustainable peace and development in the country, especially in the northeast. According to him, this is also necessary towards ensuring that farming and other socio-economic activities in the region are not disrupted. President Buhari also directed the military to sustain the ongoing counterinsurgency operations on the fringes of Lake Chad and the northeast so that the Boko Haram menace will be totally eliminated. He noted with satisfaction the giant strides being recorded by the military in the fight against insurgency, but urged them not to relent in the discharge of the mandate. The president believes the health and well-being of the nation depend largely on its ability to feed itself, and agricultural production is key. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has asked the Kogi State National Assembly Election Petition Tribunal to dismiss the petition by Dino Milaye and the People's Democratic Party, PDP, for being unmeritorious. INEC's lawyer, Chris Alashe made this request while closing the case of the first respondent at the conclusion of the tribunal's proceedings on Thursday in Abuja. Milaye and his party, the PDP, are before the tribunal to challenge the outcome of the November 16, 2019 election held in Kogi West Senatorial District, which was won by Smart Adeyemi of the All Progressives Congress APC. The petitioners, Milaye and the PDP, closed their case on April 23, 2019, after calling a number of witnesses. Milaye also testified as a petitioner's witness. At the closure of the petitioner's case, the three-man tribunal, led by Justice Issa Sambo, adjourned till April 28 for the first respondent, INEC, to open its case. For business news, Nigeria's foreign reserves continue on downward trend since January 2020. More business news after this break. Welcome to the business segment of the news. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has extended the deadlines for compliance with the revised minimum capital requirements by microfinance banks in the country. This is contained in a circular to all microfinance banks dated April 29 and signed by the Director of CBN Financial Policy and Regulation Department, Kelvin Amogo. Amogo noted that the Apex Bank had issued a set of deadlines in an earlier circular dated March 7, 2019. He explained that the review was as a result of the effect of the coronavirus on economic activities in the country. According to the CBN official, the new directive affects microfinance banks operating in rural, unbanked and underbanked areas, urban and high-density banked areas, as well as the state and national NFBs. Royal Dutch Shell on Thursday cut its dividends for the first time since the 1940s after a first quarter loss and warned virus-ravaged oil prices will take time to fully recover. The Anglo-Dutch group sank into a $24 million net loss in 3 months when oil went into free fall on tumbling demand and a price war between producers, Saudi Arabia and Russia. Earnings on the current cost of supplies basis stripping out changes to the value of oil and gas inventories sank 46% to $2.9 billion in the reporting period, Shell said. The energy titan, which asked spending last month in response to the oil crash, said it has slashed its shareholders' dividends by 65% to 16% share from 47% in the fourth quarter. The country's foreign reserves have continued its downward trend, dropping by $5.09 billion from $38.53 billion on January 2, 2020 to $33.44 billion as of April 28, 2020. Latest statistics from the Central Bank of Nigeria have revealed. According to the figures, the reserves dropped from $39.8 billion on November 11, 2019. This is after the fall by $1.26 billion from $41.76 billion on October 2nd to $40.5 billion as of the end of October. The reserves dropped by $482.18 million from 45.14 billion naira as of July 8 to $44.65 billion on August 8, 2019. During the last Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the banking sector, the CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele said the committee noted the weakened revenue position of the federal government arising from sharp drop in oil prices. Nigeria's refineries started the 2020 financial year with losses as they posted a cumulative operational deficit of 9.6 billion naira in January. Latest figures on the financial performance of the facilities from NNPC showed that the deficit recorded by the refineries in most of the month in 2019 lingered till January 2020. The refineries ended 2019 with 149.23 billion naira loss as they jointly closed the 2019 fiscal year in deficit. The report stated that the facilities pulled cumulative revenue of 68.96 billion naira, but jointly total expense of 218.18 billion naira in 2019. Providing support for small business should be a priority for economists in addressing the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has said. He stated this during the virtual conference entitled How Africa Informed Sector React to COVID-19, which also had President of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, and Governor Nasir El-Rufai of Kaduna State participating. Vice President Osinbajo said Nigeria has instigated the pandemic through conditional transfer, especially within the context of the social investment policy. African oil producers Nigeria and Angola have revised downwards their crude oil export programs for May and June to align themselves with a global production cut deal by OPEC. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, OPEC Plus, agreed to cut their combined output by 9.7 million barrels per day, or 23% each in May and June from an agreed baseline. The deal was agreed earlier this month to support prices as demand has plunged by as much as it thought due to global lockdowns to contain the spread of the coronavirus. That was the business segment of the news. Now to foreign news. Over 30 million Americans out of jobs aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic. More stories in the news after this break. On the foreign segment of the news, at least 30 million Americans have filed for unemployment in the United States. Details of this and more in this package.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said he will set up a comprehensive plan next week on restarting the economy, reopening schools and how people might travel to work. Mr. Johnson said the UK was past the peak of the coronavirus outbreak and on the downward slope, but he stressed the country must not risk a second spike of the virus. There have been 26,711 deaths in the UK hospital and the wider communities. More than 81,000 coronavirus tests were carried out on Wednesday, still short of the government's target of 100,000 by the end of April. In the US, millions more Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week as the coronavirus cases continued to weigh on the US economy. First-time claims for unemployment benefit totaled 3.8 million in the week ending April 25th, after factoring in seasonal adjustment. Without those adjustments, which economists use to account for seasonal hiring fluctuations, the raw number was 3.5 million. That brings the total number of first-time claims to 30.3 million over the past 6 weeks, representing roughly 18.6% of the U.S. labor force, as businesses have laid off workers during the stay-at-home order across the country. In Europe, the Eurozone economy shrank at the sharpest pace on record in the first quarter as the COVID-19 pandemic forced countries into lockdown. The first estimate of GDP between January and March showed a contraction of 3.8%, worse than during the financial crisis. Separate figures reviewed a step fall in economic activities in France and Spain over the same period. In Germany, unemployment has increased, though it remains relatively low compared with other countries. In Brazil, a Brazilian Supreme Court justice on Wednesday blocked President Bolsonaro's pick to run the federal police after an opposition party argued that the appointment of a family friend would allow Bolsonaro inappropriate influence over law enforcement. The decision by Justice Alexandra came after the top court authorized an investigation into allegations by Bolsonaro's former justice minister that the president had abused its power by swapping the police chief. In the Middle East, Qatar started manufacturing artificial respiratory machines in order to cover the requirement of the health sector domestically and to export internationally in light of the coronavirus pandemic. The Emir of Qatar visited the Bazan Holding Company, which is affiliated with the Ministry of Defense, and was briefed on the